Kenyatta University Hospital woes as board chair resigns. The entire board is disbanded and the CEO sent on indefinite leave, and 3,900 households displaced following the onset of rains. All that coming up in the news this morning, including business and sports. But we want to start with matters environment, where President Dr. William Ruto has commended the Kenya Wildlife Service for digitizing its services and increasing its revenues substantially. The president said the institution is now able to cover up to 87% of its budget, which has made it possible to undertake major projects to run its programs. President Ruto made the remarks during the passing out parade of 1,274 ranger recruits and cadets at the KWS Law Enforcement Academy in Manyani, that is in Taita Taveta County.
President William Ruto was in Manyani for the pass-out parade of 1,274 ranger recruits and cadets, where he commended the Kenya Wildlife Service for going digital, a move that has increased its revenue substantially. The head of state said the institution is now able to cover up to 87% of its budget and comfortably run its operations.
I commend KWS for achieving another commendable milestone, mobilizing sufficient revenue to finance 87% of its overall corporate budget through internally generated funds, thanks to the consistent improvement in efficiency and transparency.
The president emphasizing unwavering commitment to anti-poaching efforts, saying the measures have achieved remarkable success and saved a number of species that a few years ago were on the verge of extinction.
The exceptional young men and women before us have been carefully instructed, thoroughly trained, and are now entrusted with the noble duty of safeguarding Kenya's invaluable wildlife heritage.
The president pointed out that in 2020, Kenya recorded a zero rhino poaching cases, a landmark achievement, after years of battling corrupt and vicious criminal syndicate. The president said to mitigate human-wildlife conflict, the government has invested 2.9 billion shillings to address the impact of climate change, which has exacerbated conflict. We
have the largest contingent of vehicles that will be used by Kenya Wildlife Service. We have 98 vehicles that will be used by these young men and women to protect our wildlife assets and to manage our conservation spaces. Again, that is a testament to our commitment to building KWS as an institution that is going to support the wildlife sector and our national parks and game reserves.
On the human-wildlife conflict, the president said the government has introduced a digital fund administration system to ensure timely and efficient compensation for victims of wildlife attacks. The head of state challenging the newly recruited rangers to carry out their duties with dedication, courage and patriotism. Tourism Cabinet Secretary Rebecca Miano, who was present, said this year's trainees at Academy had the highest number of women in the history of ranger training.
For the record, our aim is to bring on board as many young women to the wildlife conservation space as possible, given that by nature, women are born and wired to nurture and to groom.
As the world marked International Day of Persons with Disability, that was yesterday, the government and non-governmental organizations have been urged to prioritize persons living with neurodevelopmental, that is, disorders such as epilepsy and autism, which have been termed as forgotten disabilities. The majority of them, that is, the people living with disability, are said to be facing discrimination and stigmatization, which hinders them from accessing available opportunities.
Uko hapa waziri mzima, uko hapa MP mzima, uko hapa mheshimiwa mzima, na wewe una biashara, una ofisi, lakini ofisi yako mlemavu hata hawezi ingia.
Bungoma County was the host of this year's International Day of Persons with Disability. The occasion saw thousands of Kenyans with disability flocking Kibabii Stadium in support of the day, under the theme Amplifying the Leadership of Persons with Disabilities for an Inclusive and Sustainable Future. Labour Cabinet Secretary Alfred Mutua put on notice institutions that do not implement disability-friendly policies and infrastructure in their organizations.
Wewe ni mhandisi mkuu wa serikali, una design barabara. Ile barabara una design haina hata walkway, haina hata ramp ambayo inatumika kuweza kutumia walemavu waweze kutumia vizuri. Kuanzia mwezi wa 7 tarehe 1, maofisa wa wizara yangu watazunguka kulingana na sheria. Hata kama ni bunge hapa Bungoma, tutaenda tuweke mbao tufunge.
And in Nairobi, the day was also marked with the National Councils for Persons with Disability pledging to push for the introduction of a new Disability Act that acknowledges caregivers as first responders.
When the early interventions are done the right way from the foundation, then we are sure we are building a future of inclusive leadership that involves all the diverse impairments within the disabilities.
Every child deserves the opportunity to thrive, and it's up to all of us to create a society where inclusion and acceptance is the norm.
So if you have to give finances, I think it's important that you don't classify disability into mild, middle, or intensive.
This comes amidst a call to the government to prioritize those that have neurodevelopmental disorder and also set up disability centers in schools to cater for the group.
People think that there is a perception of how autistic people should look like. So people will be like, oh, you're not autistic. Then they're like, no, you don't look like one.
However, the biggest challenge remains the support, especially from our government and even the private sector, for the invisible disabilities. And like in Kenya, approximately 1.5 people live with epilepsy.
Still in Nairobi, education stakeholders are calling for the mobilization of funds to help learners living with special needs, noting that most of them are disenfranchised due to lack of assistive devices, hence limiting them in education and consequently denying them an opportunity to compete favorably in the job market.
So I call for more resourcing so that we can have more buses, not just at the Action Foundation, but for all other organizations that are delivering STEM training. We invite them to also think innovatively on how they can reach learners.
We will be doing testing to see how it works. The bus is adapted for students with disabilities who may be using wheelchairs or who may have mobility challenges.
Elsewhere, Mandera County joined the global community in celebrating the International Day for Persons with Disabilities with a focus on inclusivity, empowerment, and equal opportunities for persons with disabilities.
Thank you, Jaila Picha, for that report. Now, Professor Olive Mogenda has resigned as the chairperson of the Kenyatta University Teaching, Referral and Research Hospital Board. In a statement issued by the State House spokesperson, that is Hussein Mohammed, President William Ruto has received and accepted the resignation that takes effect immediately. Other changes that have been effected at the referral facility include the disbandment of the entire board with immediate effect. Kenyatta University Teaching, Referral and Research Hospital CEO, that is Ahmed Dagane, has also been directed to proceed on indefinite leave. Dr. Zainab Gura has been appointed to replace him in acting capacity. Isaac Kamau, who was recently appointed by the board as acting CEO, has also been recalled to the Ministry of Health headquarters. Health workers at the referral hospital staged demos on Monday, paralyzing services at the facility to the core. The workers decried a number of grievances, which include long working hours, sexual harassment, lack of uniforms and risk allowances, and a waiver of medical bills for staff in critical care departments. At least 12 flooded-related deaths have been recorded countrywide since the onset of the short rains that are currently pounding the country. Principal Secretary in charge of Internal Security and National Administration, that is Raymond Omolo, says over 3,900 households have been displaced. And as Wycliffe Okech now reports, the PS Omolo acknowledged the relief efforts spearheaded by the Kenya Red Cross, but urged for more humanitarian assistance from well-wishers to alleviate the suffering of those affected.
Felicitas is among the over 1,900 families that are seeking refuge here at Ogenya's Center for Displaced Persons. Felicitas has been camping here since April, and despite being expectant, she has had to put up with all the challenges here, including inadequate food and medical supplies, among other basic needs.
Hizi vitu za Red Cross mchana kuna joto, lakini ikifika usiku ni baridi. Sasa hiyo kukohoa, malaria ni kitu common tu, lakini ukirent nyumba na ukuwe na kitu ya mkono unaweza manage kulipa hiyo rent.
Felicitas lives in this makeshift structure together with her 2 children and other 2 ladies. 22-year-old Felicitas sat her KCSE exams in 2019, scoring a mean grade of D+. She has aspirations of becoming a lab technician, but financial constraint is the stumbling block.
Juu wazazi hawako na hiyo uwezo ya kunilipia college, ndio maana nilikuwa married, lakini hata saa hii nikipelekwa college bado nitasoma.
Just like Felicitas Otieno, many of the households here believe that with proper and significant financial boost, they are able to fend for themselves away from this center so that they can be able to stand on their own feet once again.
Felicitas and her 2 children are among the over 3,900 households that have since been displaced from their homes by the ongoing rains, which have also claimed at least 12 lives countrywide.
It is not acceptable in this day and age that we have Kenyans stay in camps year end, and we have a responsibility to work closely, both national government and county governments, to address that concern.
PS Raymond Omolo says the government is pursuing both short-term and long-term response measures, which include construction of dikes along rivers and water streams, as well as establishing resettlement schemes for flood victims.
And as we try to have Kenyans stay away from danger, we do what it takes, but again we are appealing to Kenyans to work closely with all the leaders at all levels.
Omolo is at the same time urging for more humanitarian assistance for the flood victims.
Thank you, Wycliffe Okech, for that report. The Deputy Chief of Staff in charge of Performance and Delivery Management, Eliud Owalo, has called for caution in the adoption of artificial intelligence to avoid misinformation and disinformation during, driven by technology on social media ahead of the 2027 general elections. Owalo, who was speaking during the regional conference on use of AI, digital and social media in Kenya elections, said whereas the country cannot ignore emerging technological trends, there was need for players in the sector to safeguard misuse that can harm the nation's fabric. Wiper leader Kalonzo Musyoka, who attended the event, however, called for urgent reconstitution of the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, IEBC, saying further delay may plunge the country into a deeper constitutional crisis.
I urge those who are standing in the way of reconstituting IEBC to be able to see the bigger picture. They should set aside their narrow selfish interest in preference to the greater good of this nation. Please allow us to reconstitute IEBC as soon as possible. Please allow us. Anybody in Kenya today hearing that the Senate wishes to do with with the live streaming of elections would just be surprised. Are we going backwards or forwards in this country?
There is risk of polarization, erosion of trust due to AI-driven misinformation, and potential voter manipulation. We therefore need to balance the risks and opportunities with respect to technology from an electoral process perspective.
We look at business now, where the government is in the process of streamlining complex licensing processes that have previously led to delays and inefficiencies to investors seeking swift entry into the Kenyan market. Prime Cabinet Secretary Musalia Mudavadi says the new reforms will help deal with retrogressive legislation to enhance Kenya's business environment and attract more foreign investment. Trevor Ngendo with the details.
Speaking at the 5th Germany African Business Summit, Prime Cabinet Secretary Musalia Mudavadi says the government is committed to discarding outdated policies and enacting reforms that enhance the ease of doing business.
We have to strike a proper balance between attracting capital and benefiting the Kenyans. Let us not have legislation that has become an obstacle to foreign direct investment in our countries.
Mudavadi says the government is making steady progress in deepening cooperation with Germany in labor migration, trade and investment, necessitating the need for the country to align its legal and institutional frameworks to make the movement of capital faster and unlock opportunities for young entrepreneurs.
These young people we are talking about, the 60%, they need jobs, not tomorrow, but today. So we need to have some very positive action. And I hope through these conversations, we shall be able to overcome such challenges, such barriers.
930 German companies are in Africa and invested in Africa and employ over 230,000 people in Africa. These are good figures, but not so good that we could not do better.
The 3-day summit brings together business leaders, policymakers and stakeholders from Africa and Germany to explore opportunities for enhanced trade and investment.
The animal vaccines to be used during next year's mass livestock vaccination exercise will be procured locally. Agriculture Cabinet Secretary says the vaccines will be sourced from Kenya Veterinary Vaccines Production Institute, and already the vaccines have undergone quality assurance, urging farmers to avail their animals for vaccination in January next year.
The mass livestock vaccination has been slated for January next year, with the government targeting to vaccinate 77 million cattle, sheep and goats. Agriculture Cabinet Secretary Andrew Karanja says doses of the vaccines will only be procured from the Kenya Veterinary Vaccine Production Institute to reduce the vaccination costs.
We will be sourcing all our vaccines from this center, Kivavapi. So there will be no vaccines which is coming from outside the country.
These vaccines are produced in Kenya, and the Directorate of Veterinary Services undertakes quality assurance of all vaccines produced.
The exercise targets to vaccinate 22 million cattle against foot and mouth disease, 50 million sheep and goats against pes de petit rumina.
The program is premised on prevention is better than cure. It's cheaper to prevent the disease from causing infection in the animal, and it will be more productive and even earn you more money.
The vaccination exercise is part of the 15-year livestock sector master plan that plans to increase livestock production and increase livestock shipments to key destination markets.
The animals, we are able to safeguard our animals and also our human, and also make sure that we can trade with the animals and also the meat. And to do so, we need to create a disease-free zones or disease-free country.
The Vaccine Institute says the vaccination exercise will also reduce the use of antibiotics in animal health, in turn reduce cases of antibiotics resistance in humans.
A look at sports now, where the Kenyan national women's team Harambee Starlets thrashed Morocco 5-0 in the second international friendly match that was played at the Mohammed VI Football Complex in Morocco. Fasila Adhiambo opened the score for Starlets before Wana Halima dominated a brace just before halftime. Violet Nanjala and Elizabeth Mideva both scored in the second half to seal the victory. Wana Halima was also on target twice when Harambee Starlets drew 2-2 with Morocco in the first friendly match. Beg your pardon. Meanwhile, the Junior Stars are already in camp for the CECAFA Under-17 African Cup of Nations qualifiers, which will be held in Kampala, Uganda, from the 14th to the 27th of this month. The Kenya Under-17 football team is drawn with Somalia, South Sudan, and Sudan in Group B, with their first match against South Sudan. And Kericho Senator, that is Aaron Cheruiyot, scored a brace for Bunge FC in the warm-up match against Nation Media Group, but they narrowly lost the match 3-2. Bunge FC are preparing for the upcoming East African Community Interparliamentary Games, which are scheduled to kick off in Mombasa this weekend.
Bunge FC have played a number of build-up matches in preparations for this monthly East African Community Interparliamentary Games. And today they hosted the NMG football team, who narrowly beat them 3-2 in their friendly encounter played at the Ulinzi complex. Bunge's 2 goals were netted by co-captain Aaron Cheruiyot, who is the Senate Majority Leader and Kericho Senator.
I think we are very well prepared this year, more than any other year. We have a very good team that has prepared throughout the year. Most of our colleagues are very fit, unlike in previous years. We only have lost a few to injury. A few crucial players like Mheshimiwa Dan Wanyama and David Ochieng, who are normally in our starting 11, but unfortunately, due to injury, will not be playing for us. But we have very suitable replacement in new members that have come in and have fit into that space.
Despite the loss, the team has confidence in their preparations, having been in training throughout the year and have also beefed up their squad with more Kenyan MPs joining the soccer team. Bunge FC finished third in the last edition and now eyes a top finish, especially with the home ground advantage in the game set from the 6th to 18th of this month in Mombasa County.
Well, that's where we end the news this morning. Thank you so much, as always, for your company. My colleague Victor Lo is up next with The Viewpoint. My name is Marie Yambo.